Hello, everyone. Before I continue, I want to say Happy Mother Day for all the mothers in the audience. My name is Nelson Lim, and I'm Executive Director of Fels. This is a proud and happy occasion for us, and I'm glad that you all could join us. First, please join me in congratulating our graduates. Congratulations to the class of 2018. You did it. Second, I would like to recognize the contribution made by the family and friends of our students. Congratulations to you as well. Your love and support has sustained our students throughout their journey. Their success is also your success. Since 1937, the Fels Institute of Government has educated generations of distinguished public leaders. Their accomplishments are legacy, and they are the author of our history. I'm confident that this year's graduating student class will continue this tradition by writing their own chapter in the enduring history of Fels. Each individual graduating today has much to contribute to the public goods. Today, you will hear from two of our graduates and get a small sample of the talent in this group. When you hear our student speaker, you will understand why I'm so confident in their success. It is my great pleasure to introduce our student's commencement speaker, two of our very best, Abigail Dym, representing our full-time students, and Dan Foley, Do you notice the sibling rivalry going on here? But we love everyone's, but sometimes can't help ourselves. Dan Foley, representing our executive students. Please join me in welcoming Abigail and Dan.
Good morning. First, again, thank you to all the family and friends and loved ones here. Happy Mother's Day, but also happy day to all the people who have supported us in this journey. There are lots of different forms of parenting out there, and we are grateful for all of you. My name is Abigail, and thank you to the staff and students for supporting me and speaking today. I know that this speech is but a handful of things standing in between you and your afternoon mimosa, so I hope you find it worthwhile. And a special extension of gratitude to my parents, my sister, and my husband. Could not have done this without you. And to my 89-year-old grandfather, Sal. Thank you for all the decades sitting in uncomfortable chairs listening to me talk and sing about stuff. I hope I have your genes, and I'm forever grateful to have you. So, I began baking bread 7 years ago when I began teaching. This was not random. Teaching is filled with complex challenges and joys. Daily, I spent double-digit hours in a windowless classroom with young people whose lives were both beautiful and earth-shatteringly complicated. It was an absolute honor to facilitate learning for these young people, and it was absolutely exhausting. My students, like most children, grappled with hormones, the meaning of life, the purpose of school. Unlike many kids, my students also had to grapple with the ramifications of systemic racism and inequality. Our school, in a zip code mere miles from school districts, ranked among the best in the country, had antiquated textbooks and rodents in the walls, legacies of state funding injustices, and a history of redlining policies. These students won full scholarships to college. and lost siblings to violence. They engaged in radical conversations about gender identity and were physically threatened for being non-binary. Some of these kids are now entering their junior year in college on the honor roll, and others have dropped out and can't pay off their loans. As a teacher, the failures were particularly painful because so often I felt helpless and useless, faced daily with the reality that our nation is failing our young people, and even the most dedicated teacher could do very little to readjust the horrific decline. Loving students from a place of empathy means accepting and holding on to their stories, their loves, joys, confusions, and challenges. It means heaping their complex circumstances onto your back and letting them sneak into piles of ungraded papers. Their stories linger. They come home with you, infuse themselves into your relationships, your weekends, and your worldview. And even when you love your students this much, it often feels inadequate in the face of such enormous systemic challenges. The nuances and scale of these issues faced by students all over the country is immense. These issues are lived challenges that real people endure. They're also the content of case studies and courses we've taken here at Penn. We know quite well how exhaustingly multifaceted they are, especially in such a politically polarized environment. So, both exhausted and fulfilled by my weeks with my students, I dedicated Sundays to making bread. Bread, unlike teaching or education policy, felt simpler, like an opportunity to escape. A rhythmic amalgam of flour, water, salt, and yeast. Flour, water, salt, and yeast. It became a respite from the complexities of being an educator. At the end of particularly tough weeks, I admit I would daydream about opening my own bakery, a vision glowing with the hope that this dream life would somehow be simpler than the one I was living. I was convinced that being a baker would mean fewer emotional ups and downs, fewer confrontations with seemingly impossible decisions or painful circumstances, and the opportunity to actually make people happy and feel successful all the time. This dream was best brought down to earth with the words of Arundhati Roy. The trouble is that once you see it, you can't unsee it. And once you've seen it, keeping quiet, saying nothing, becomes as political an act as speaking out. There's no innocence. Either way, you're accountable. Her words are so grounding. Simplicity, if emboldened by chosen ignorance, is anything but simple. I'm accountable. We're accountable. Doing nothing makes us complicit in the injustices with which we are all too familiar. Now, there's nothing wrong with making bread. Trust me, I have no intention of stopping. But I and everyone in this room has seen it. We know about inadequacies and inequities. We've experienced them personally or through the people and communities with whom we've worked and served and love. We know too much to keep quiet. It would be irresponsible to lose myself in bread dough and ovens in order to escape the complexities of public service. And yet, a commitment to public service doesn't solve the exhaustion, the burnout, the failures and feelings of inadequacy and helplessness. How do we handle these very real feelings? How do we make this life of public service just a little more sustainable? How can we serve each other without tiring ourselves out? In response to this dilemma, philosopher Elizabeth Anderson proposes a democratic egalitarianism, an equality built upon relationships, not just money or stuff, a commitment to intentionally honor the equal humanity in each other. Perhaps this sounds trite and even a bit fluffy, but I don't think so. It could help us keep our service in perspective. We need to be good to each other. I really believe that. In a complex world that demands genuinely nuanced policy responses, we can simplify not by disengaging. Sadly, we can't all be bread bakers, but by each taking responsibility through a commitment to being compassionate. Now, there are many very valid caveats to this. Compassion is exhausting in the face of discrimination and totally unwarranted. Not all ideologies, especially those that seek to harm or reduce rights of others, deserve to be compassionately acknowledged. And on its own, this philosophy will not alleviate our issues. We still need evidence-based policies and logical decision-making, disagreement, and even conflict. However, I think our culture has overlooked the incredible potential of compassion, empathy, and kindness. And I urge us in this room to view them as tools we can deploy to make each other's lives better in small ways. Where even if we don't solve inequality, at least immediately, we can meet all people eye to eye. It's a worthy goal, a worthy foundational ethos of a truly grounded policymaker. In those difficult moments, when we are with our students, our neighbors, our patients, our constituents, it is always within our power to choose compassion. We in this room have received an impressive caliber of postgraduate opportunities. It's a testament to the skills we've gained and our dedication to public service. In the near future, we will be tasked with making decisions about complex issues, and we'll need to balance diverse stakeholders, tricky political and economic realities, and our own moral compass. It's going to be complicated, and pretending otherwise would be a disservice to the difficult and fascinating nature of policy work. We love this stuff. That's why we came to Fels. And we are accountable to staying engaged in it, even when our students struggle, when budgets run thin, or our leadership strays from the mission of our work. We get to choose how we respond. Let it be with compassion for ourselves, for friends, colleagues, strangers we pass on the street, the hardworking people we serve. Stay grounded in our shared humanity and in our own. We in this room have a responsibility to vigorously and compassionately engage with the challenges of policy and to never forget for whom and for what we are showing up every single day. This will get old, so pick something that is going to help you stay sane for the next 30 plus years. Yoga or video games or basketball or music or hiking, whatever. Figure it out and start being good to yourself so you can start being good to others. Part of this is recognizing that we have seen the world for what it is, and pretending we can unsee it would be lying to ourselves. There are so many dedicated and talented people graduating today, endeavoring to make the world a better place. Let us commit to holding on to our compassion for our own sake, for each other's, for people we serve but may never meet, and for the woman we pass on the street on our way home from the office. Pause your podcast for a moment. Freeze the stream of numbers and data abstracting her life. Look her in the face and smile. In those moments when all seems futile, I know we've had a few since we started in the fall of 2016, we can take solace in knowing that each person can take steps towards improving the world by loving our neighbor, familiar or foreign. I believe this simple act can help dissolve some of our most stubborn problems and make space for spectacular human possibilities. Thank you.
Can we keep it going for Abigail and her humanity and her grace? Not only was she an AmeriCorps member and a teacher, but just what an incredible human being. We do need to be good to one another. It's funny because I will give my speech, but you gave more than half of it. So, and I'm not worried because you came here to clap for people. So, that's what we're going to do, right? So, first, I do want us to just acknowledge Dr. Lim, Dr. Josh Power, Cassie, Cameron, Eileen, Lauren, who I saw in the back, and everybody who works on the Fels team for making this place a home for us for the last 2 years. Can you please give them a round of applause? Thank you. Of course. And also thank you to our families and classmates who have poured into us. We are the result of your sacrifices, your support, and your love. And to the friends and family of my classmates, if it wasn't for you, my classmates wouldn't be who they are, and I love them a whole lot. So thanks for making that a little easier for me over these last year and a half, 2 years. But most importantly, today on Mother's Day, much like many of you, my mom is the person who instilled the core values that make me, me. My mom's values are my values. Of course, I would literally not be here if it was not for her. We all know that story. But the worldview, which is the torch that guides my actions, wouldn't be but a flicker if it wasn't for my mom leading me the entire way. This graduation day for all of us there is a gift to our mothers, because there is no better gift that we can give them than by doing the things they knew we were capable of doing, even before we knew we were capable of doing those things. So if we all can give a huge round of applause to our moms while I clap for my mom for being here. So my mom gets bonus points because she shared me with the world for thousands of miles and many mixed text messages and calls over the years. So I didn't tell her that I was giving this speech. This is a surprise to her and my gift to you. I love you, Mom. I'm an ugly crier, so I'm going to move on from talking about my mom, but we can do this later. One of my favorite ad campaigns over the last couple of years was one that the slogan was, "We're all just a kid from somewhere." Some of you may know I grew up in Northeast Philly. You'll hear it in my accent. And it's not that geographically far from Penn, but culturally and economically, I and my guys who are here just grew up in a very different place than this. And it wasn't until high school, running track at the Penn Relays, where Penn even came into my consciousness. And in my teenage mind, I decided that that I would never get into Penn, that this side of the city that I very rarely found myself on would never become a home to me, and those students who sit beside me today were way too smart for me to even be in league with them. So when I started Fels, I had this, inner conflict, this identity crisis that took place that many of my classmates have really counseled me through over the last couple of years. Even though I had already been admitted, and I'm an adult, and I've done some pretty cool things in my life, I just couldn't shake the feeling that I just didn't belong here with them. And the irony of imposter syndrome, which many of you have heard of, or the feeling of being a misfit for the environment that you're in, is that you can only experience imposter syndrome if you are exactly where you ought to be. And despite having little understanding of how you would get there and what it would be like. And much like my first semester in undergraduate studies, when I had to fight back the feeling of college just wasn't for me, which so many of my high school classmates went through, I knew I had to own that the Fels Institute of Government at the University of Pennsylvania, was a place that I belonged. And so my realization of belonging to this team became rooted in the idea that participating in this program wasn't about me proving how much I already knew, but rather to learn the things that I wanted to know in order to get better at doing the things that I wanted to do, and to do so alongside of my incredible classmates. So it's beyond meaningful for me today to have my niece Amara and my mentor Greg, one of which is going to be a freshman in high school next year, the other of which is going to be a freshman in college next year, seeing me up here doing all of this, because I just want them to know that these are the places that you belong. And if you choose this path, this is very much what you are capable of doing. So like that commercial said, we are all just a kid from somewhere. And somewhere is a part of our story, but it's not our entire story. And what makes up a large part of the rest of the story is what we decide to do. We came to Fels, as many of you know, at a time when our generation is seeking a voice and leaders to take responsibility for developing the potential of our communities, our nation, and our world. Now, none of us are arrogant enough to say, at least out loud, that I want to be the leader of my generation, or that we want to be the leaders of our generation, but each of us in the room has accepted that our generation needs leaders, given, we need them, and two, that we are deliberately going through the process of becoming those people. So we have to own that idea, that mantle of leadership that we're taking on. And just when you start talking the way I'm talking, and some of you who aren't in our class may be thinking this as I'm saying it, people start to look at you like you've lost your mind. They ask questions which essentially boil down to, why even bother? It's so awful out there. There's so much wrong. Those kids can't learn. Why not just take care of yourself and your hand-selected group of loved ones and call it a day or a career or a life? Wouldn't that be nice? But to do only what we're capable of doing for those who we are interested in doing it for is not what our calling is. So we're not just going to go and hit the beach and drink mimosas and Netflix and chill and just coast on out on the rest of our lives, because my classmates already know that this isn't their path for the simple fact that there's just too much at stake for us to remain complacent and complicit with the themes that Abigail spoke to. We have responsibilities to take on. They know that there's going to be a natural disaster in the area of the world that they've dreamed on visiting. But there's going to be a senseless killing on the other side of town, which some of you may have heard of this morning just picking up the Philly newspaper or looking on your phone, because who's picking up newspapers? No shout-outs to the Inquirer, love you. Or that the kids in our communities won't receive the same education as your kids will. They know this. And of course, these are just a few examples, but these are inflection points for folks like us that challenge us to live up to Socrates' notes of living a life well examined. And in examining our lives, my classmates and I will count our privileges and blessings, like being participants in a program like at Fels. And I know that each of them will be inspired to prevent these challenges from afflicting our communities any further. Why do I know this? Because they're doing it already. My life for the last 10 years has been committed to empowering young people through service to provide children the highest quality education that they can get in the communities that need it the most. But my classmates help nonprofits perform at their highest of missions. They protect the environment. They serve as elected officials or run great campaigns. They make sure our local and state governments respond to the needs of their constituents. They ensure that millions of people have access to clean water. You see that? They take care of our neighbors when their physical and mental health is no longer within their own control. They've served in the United States Armed Forces and do the most important work by being wonderful parents to beautiful children. I could go on forever talking about the accomplishments and the contributions of my classmates, because they are, in fact, the leaders that our generation is calling on, and they've been that the entire time that I've been studying alongside of them. So, just like Jason Kelsey of the Philadelphia Eagles would say, right now, let's go Birds, it's the whole team! Had to get a Birds quote in there. So, the world champs. Not too long ago, my youngest AmeriCorps member, when asked why she served, responded with a Teddy Roosevelt quote that I'd never heard of. And it's, far and away, the best prize that life has to offer is the chance to work hard at work worth doing. There are no saviors in this room. There are just people who deeply understand that quote and are committed to doing the work worth doing to benefit others. So we will continue to commit our time, our daily inputs, the small steps of how change is made, all of which we are now better equipped to succeed at doing because we have gone through this experience together. We are all just a kid from somewhere. We are also what we choose to do. And our generation needs leaders that will bring us together and solve the great challenges of our day and do that work worth doing. I know that these are those people. I'm proud to be one of their number. This is not the beginning for us, but rather the closing of one chapter whose lessons will be the foundation for the ones to follow. It's been an honor to co-author this chapter alongside of each of you, and I look forward to seeing all the good that we do in our journeys to come. Thanks, y'all.